Hello, everyone, and happy Wednesday afternoon. I want to thank you for joining us here at Pasadena Humane. If you are new to us, my name is Michelle. I am the outreach coordinator here, and joined with me is Miss Izzy. She is our wonderful, amazing foster manager. There's not a lot that can be done at the shelter without her. So. And I don't know if that's just my opinion, but I really appreciate all of the work that Izzy does. And she's going to share with us a little bit about what it means to foster and what the expectations are.
Yeah, thanks so much, Michelle. Again, it takes a village to get this foster program running, and not just the staff, but volunteers, and every program kind of helps contribute. So it's definitely a team effort there. So I appreciate all the help too, Michelle. I am Izzy. I'm the foster manager. I've been working at Pasadena Humane for about a little over 3 years now. Goodness. And I have been in the foster program since then, and it has been such a joy to be a part of and watch people grow through the program, but also the animals. So I'm here to talk about the program, what the actual program is and what it isn't, and I'll go over how the process goes, and if you want to foster, we'll go through those steps as well. So that's kind of the overview for today.
Yeah, so it seems like time flies, in our jobs, because I'm at almost 4 years.
Yeah, so. Seriously, you blink and it, a whole year has passed. It's crazy.
So especially this last year.
Definitely. Yes, definitely.
All right,
so I can.
Okay. I'm going to go over some webinar reminders for those of you who are new to us today. If you've seen these before, bear with us as we go through them. I just want to remind everyone this is an audio-visual presentation, so even though you can see and hear Izzy and I, we can't see and hear you. With that in mind, go ahead and use the question box on the right-hand side of your screen, and we will address your questions as we have time. Usually it's towards the end when we open up for question and answers. Today's webinar, like we said, we will be talking about what fostering is and kind of what it isn't, and addressing those misconceptions that people have. Next month, we're going to debunk those microchip myths with one of our veterinarians and really talk about what the microchips are and why you should get one and why they're so important to our animals. Okay, and then following that, we will be talking about cat photography with renowned artist Erica Danger. Okay. If at any time you've got to leave or you've joined late or you want to hear some information again because it wasn't quite clear the first time, this webinar is recorded and will be sent to you tomorrow afternoon. If you enjoy the webinar and you want to make an impact, you can go ahead and use this donation link below. All of the donations in the month of May are doubled. And then today only, we are tripling that impact. So just $1 turns into $3 to help these shelter animals. And without further ado, go ahead and take it away, Izzy.
Goodness, that is a very old picture of me. Let's see. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I have a little presentation. Let me see. I will go ahead and put that in present mode. There we go. All right, so fostering is a pretty big program that has kind of taken over in the last year or so. With the pandemic, we've really had to rely on foster programs to help us take care of our animals. And shelters all across the nation do this as well. But I'm here to kind of talk about what the program entails and what it's for, so that you guys can get a better idea of how fostering works. And I believe we have one poll question after this one.
It is on your screen. So the true
Perfect.
or false, the goal of fostering is for shelter animals to stay in foster care forever. So let's see. So we're gonna give this just a few more seconds, but Izzy, I want to tell you, it is over. The audience thinks that this is a false statement by an overwhelming margin.
Perfect. All right, I'll stop there. So basically, that is correct. The foster program is intended to be a temporary home before our animals go to their forever homes. So typically, foster homes will provide a safe, loving environment where they get proper care, typically for medical or behavior cases or for animals that may not be old enough for adoption. So essentially, the goal of fostering is to get them to their forever home. So the foster volunteer is going to be providing this love and care to get them to that point of where they're ready for their adoptive home and can move on. So it's more of a temporary commitment, which is kind of great if that's for you. If you're not ready to adopt, fostering is a nice way where you can help these homeless animals, for a short term, and then you can see it through to them getting adopted, which is pretty great. So there's a lot of benefits of fostering, not just for you, but for the animal as well. For the animal, they get a really good break from the shelter environment. So the shelter can be pretty stressful. We do everything we can to provide enrichment, playtime, walks, in a quiet environment for them, but it's never going to be as great as a home environment. And so when we send animals into foster care, we're providing them, this quiet household where they're not hearing other animals, they're not, around a lot of other people. And so it can be a really nice break for animals that may be having some stress from the shelter environment. And also being in a foster home can keep them a little bit healthier. So how I like to compare it is to like the shelter can be like a preschool sometimes, right? We have a kitten nursery where there's kennels of kittens. And if one kitten gets sick, it can spread pretty easily. Just like in a preschool, if one kid gets sick, it can spread very easily to the other kids. And so when you send animals into a foster home where they're not interacting with any other animals from the shelter, it can be a lot more sterile environment where they're not exposed to, like kennel cough, other illnesses that might be around. And so home environment can be just a nice reprieve from this environment that might have some bacteria or illnesses flying around. And another great thing about sending animals into foster care is that you as the foster volunteer get to learn a lot about the animal. We can only learn so much in the shelter environment about how an animal's behavior is, but when they're in a home environment, they might act completely differently. And so you're really spending that one-on-one time with this animal, and you can take notes and take day-to-day observations to see how they are. And that actually helps our adoptions team match the animal appropriately with an adopter, because we'll know more information about them. And then by taking an animal into foster care, that frees up a kennel on campus. And so as we're intaking animals every day, we kind of have to have this rotating, movement of animals going in and out so that we can appropriately take care of the animals that are still coming in every day. And then the one really, really great thing that I appreciate about foster homes too is that we have a lot of behaviorally and medically challenging animals, and we have foster volunteers that are able to give medication or apply training plans that our behavior team puts together. And so we're really getting the chance to apply these things to these animals and help them just become better, healthier animals to adopt out. So those are the benefits of fostering. And then for me personally, fostering is always a joy. Having kittens around is a lot of fun. You learn a lot of responsibilities and how much it really does take to care for the animals. So something that's really important is how we get our animals in the first place. Not a lot of people know. So I just put this slide in here to kind of discuss that. A lot of our animals are owner surrenders. So this would be if someone couldn't take care of their animal anymore, whether it was for monetary reasons or they moved and they don't live in a pet friendly place, something like that. Owners that live in our service cities can surrender to us. And of course, we'll take as much information as we can from the owner so we can work with this animal. We obviously get stray animals, people who find animals on the street. They can turn them into us if they are missing, or we can hopefully reunite them with the owner. If they're truly stray animals, we can also take them in. We do sometimes transfer in animals from other shelters, which is pretty cool. There are some shelters that are pretty inundated with animals. And so when we have space and have the capacity to do this, we can take some animals from those high population shelters so that we can kind of help them with their own population. And then sometimes we get animals for custody reasons. So this would be if someone maybe went to the hospital and someone needs to take care of their animal, or for court cases, sometimes we'll have to take animals for those reasons. And lastly, we take in returns. So if someone adopts from us and it's not a great fit, or they end up not being able to take care of the animal, we always encourage people to return back to us so we can help place this animal since we know them really well at this point. So that's kind of an overview of how we get our animals in the first place. Some considerations for fostering. So if you're thinking about fostering, these are some things that you want to think about before making the leap to do the training and become a volunteer. I wrote this short list down because it's everything that I had to think about when I was deciding on if I should foster. And so here's some considerations that you should think about. The first one is transportation. You want to make sure you have reliable transportation to and from the shelter. We unfortunately don't have the ability to send a car out to you or send deliveries. So if you need supplies, or you're going to come pick up the animal or bring it for like a health exam, you need to have reliable transportation so that you can make those appointments. You also need household agreement. This is something I really try to highlight because we have had people who decide to foster. They bring an animal home, and then maybe their parent tells them, nope, this is not allowed. Bring that animal back. And the only reason why I really stress this is because the back and forth of having an animal go to a home and then get returned immediately can add a lot of stress. And so you want to make sure that everyone in your household is in agreement about taking on this responsibility, having a stray animal in your house, and making sure that everyone's on board before bringing an animal home. The next thing is pests and transmissible diseases. So as I talked about, we get a lot of animals as strays. They can be exposed to all sorts of things in the environment. And so we do an intake exam on every animal that comes in. We do vaccines, dewormers, flea medication, and an overall exam. And if they are like showing signs of like a cold or something like that, we provide treatment. However, if you do bring a foster animal home, you do have to acknowledge that this animal might have been exposed to something, and it could get sick or spread illness to maybe your resident pets. And so that's something you really want to think about if you have your own pets at home. You want to think about if you have space to separate foster animals so that you can keep your pets healthy just in case the foster animals might be sick. That's a pretty big deal if you have your own pets, so that's something you want to think about. And then the next one is damage and injuries. So this is more for our dogs or maybe our kittens too, but something you want to think about is that there could be possible damage to your household, injuries that might result from fostering, where like we had a dog who had really terrible separation anxiety, and she may have chewed on a few walls. And so that's something you want to consider, that you're bringing in this animal that we may not have a lot of information on. And so it's possible that there might be something like that happens. I will say kittens might get poop on your wall somehow. And so those are things you want to think about. before bringing an animal home, and if you're ready to take on that responsibility as well. The next one is the death of a foster animal. So this happens rarely, but it does happen. It's happened to me a few times, especially with young kittens. They are the most vulnerable population. They can flip a switch really quickly one day. Like they might be really healthy, and then the next day they might start crashing. And so part of the hard parts of fostering is dealing with death and loss. It is definitely a possibility. You can do everything right in the foster care and still have an animal get sick and maybe it doesn't make it. So that's something that you have to consider if you're ready to take that on and understand that, it's never someone's fault, but it can happen. And then lastly, saying goodbye, right? The most important thing about foster care is that we want to get them to their adoptive home. And so it will tug at your heartstrings to say bye. I have, all of my animals are foster failures. I adopted all of them. And it is truly hard to say goodbye. And so something that you have to work on is training your brain to say, the ultimate goal is adoption. I am just the temporary home. And I'm providing them this, super fun time just for a little bit until they get placed. But sometimes you do end up not being able to say goodbye. Okay. And I think poll question. Yes.
What is the most popular animal to place in foster care? Is it adult dogs, neonatal kittens, hamsters, or goldfish? All right, so we've kind of got a split decision here, Izzy.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'll give the poll just a couple more seconds before I close it. Okay, and I'm going to close in 3, 2, and 1. So some people said hamsters, nobody mentioned a goldfish, but the two popular answers were adult dogs with 36% and neonatal kittens at 56%.
Perfect. So yes, neonatal kittens are definitely the biggest need for foster care. Again, I was saying they are our most vulnerable population. There is actually a kitten season. So in the spring and summer months, the warmer months, that's when cats tend to mate. And we'll see a huge influx in kittens coming in just because stray cats are having litters and litters and litters. And so that's kind of our main focus every year. But of course, with now the added pandemic stress, we have had, some dog intakes. And so we do have a need for adult large dogs, but typically kittens are our biggest population that we send out. Oops. Go back. Okay. So this is just a kind of an overview of our animal population and how we kind of break it up for foster care. So there's our, main population of animals on campus, and then we have our adult animals, so adult dogs, cats, and critters. And then on the other side, we have our nursery animals. The nursery animals are our kittens, puppies, and any nursing mothers. And then on the adult side, we can kind of break up foster cases into behavior or medical and hospice cases. So for adult dog and cat fostering, we typically just send out medical or behavior cases. Especially for cats, they tend to get pretty stressed out in the kennel environment. Just because it's very different from if they came off the streets or if they were from a home environment. The kennel is kind of a hard place to be in. And so sometimes we'll send them into foster care just to get a break, get moved to a nice quiet home. And then for medical reasons, like for example, Twiggy here on this slide, this little black Chihuahua, he broke his leg and needed bandage changes every week. And so we sent him into foster care, and the volunteer was so great and flexible with her schedule, but she would bring him in every week to get that bandage changed until his bone was completely healed. And then he was adopted very quickly. So that was kind of a nice way where we had a medical case, and the foster volunteer was still able to provide this care and bring him in for those necessary appointments. And typically too, the adult dogs and cats that are in foster care are available for adoption. And so we try to get, photos and descriptions about them from the volunteer to help promote them. There's also critter fostering. So we do get in rabbits, guinea pigs, hamsters, lizards, snakes, all sorts of things that you can imagine. But typically we send out rabbits, guinea pigs, and hamsters into foster care. And we'll send all the supplies for them and talk about, how to take care of them. But typically these are kind of fun little critters to take care of in foster care. I know a lot of families with children have taken cases like this, and have helped foster them throughout, the pandemic, which has been really great. And then they get adopted out, which is perfect.
So Izzy, I want to ask the audience if they think fostering a critter is difficult. So, because I know sometimes it's one of our harder animals to place because we kind of have this misconception that, it is hard. So it is a split decision. Actually, between true and false. So
okay, well, I can talk about that. So it can be difficult if it maybe is your first time taking on a rabbit, guinea pig, or hamster, but really in reality, they're really great pets to foster. Rabbits can be litter box trained, so you put hay in the little box and they'll eat and poop at the same time, which is super lovely. And basically you can keep them confined to a little space in your household with a gate or like a little kennel that we can send home with you. And so it's really not that hard to take care of them once you have the proper setup and tools, and we can help talk that through. But typically they are pretty easy once you get a rundown of just the proper husbandry. But they can be really fun, and they're small animals, so it kind of helps if you maybe have a smaller space in your household. And so it's kind of nice to take on critters just because they're a fun, unique little animal to take on. And definitely the people who have done critter fostering have enjoyed it and keep doing it. So I would say it can be harder if it's your first time, but once you get the hang of it, it's pretty easy. Next, we have puppy and kitten fostering. Again, as I was saying, this is our biggest need for foster care. So in these cases, they're our most vulnerable population. They're really susceptible to illness, right? So like the little kitten at the top there probably hasn't received his first vaccine yet because he's too young. And so that means he hasn't really started his process to gaining this immune system. So it's crucial that we get them into foster homes where they're in this more sterile environment so that they don't get sick and they can stay healthy. But it's also really great to get socialization. Kittens and puppies need socialization from humans to understand that bond and become friendly and social. So foster homes really produce these lovely kittens and puppies that are just bulletproof. They love people. They're, comfortable in different spaces. They're used to loud sounds. And so it's kind of the foster volunteer's responsibility to kind of help expose them to different things and help them become this blossoming little animal for someone to adopt. And essentially the goal is to just raise them until they are of adoptable age. And then it'll be their time to move on. As you can imagine, a lot of people want to adopt kittens and puppies. The next program here is our hospice program. So hospice just means foster hospice. Similarly with people, it's animals that we have been able to determine are terminally ill. And so we send them into foster care to live out the rest of their days comfortably until it's their time to cross the rainbow bridge. So if there's an animal that we know has cancer, but is still active, eating, using the bathroom appropriately, we'll send them into foster care just to have some more fun before it's their time to go. We won't provide any heroics, like we are an animal shelter. We can't do chemo. We can't, put our animals through something that might be more painful in the long run. And so we just want to give them this nice moment to still enjoy life. Instead of, being at the shelter environment, they can go into a home and really live out the rest of their days until it's their time to go. And volunteers in this program work really closely with the foster team and the health team. We ask for updates and we stay in close contact to see how the animal's doing. Tigre here actually was diagnosed with cancer and he was in foster care but doing really well. And this lovely family saw his photo and met him and decided to adopt him, and he's still kicking, so he's still having a great time. And so it's one of those things that's hard to say how long they might have, so it might be a longer term of foster care. So now that I've talked about all the programs, here is our process to become a foster volunteer. So if you're interested in becoming a volunteer, you can simply go to our website, pasadenahumane.org. There is a section that says Get Involved, and it drops down to Foster a Pet. There's a button that says I want to foster, and it will take you to our foster application online. Once you complete that, you'll receive our volunteer orientation and our foster volunteer training, which is a presentation I put together and has my voice over it. And then once that's done, you take a quiz, submit some forms, and then we'll send you a welcome to fostering email that has the next steps to get matched and go from there.
So, and Izzy, I've also put the link in the chat box for anyone. So
Perfect.
It's kind of easy. And you mentioned foster matching, so I'm going to throw a poll up on the a question up on the screen. So for foster matching, you can pick out the animal that you want to foster. Is this true or false? Oh, this is a split decision as well, Izzy.
I figured.
So we'll leave it open for just a few more seconds. And we're gonna close it in 3, 2, and 1. So 64% of people said this is a true statement and 36 said that it was a false statement.
Okay.
Izzy, I'm gonna have you pause for a moment because we've lost your audio. Izzy, I'm gonna have you pause. We've lost your audio. No, cannot hear you.
Hello.
Yes, got
Okay,
you. So
perfect.
if we can go back to the other slide where you talk, oh, we lost you after foster when we
Oh,
started talking about foster matching.
gotcha. Okay,
Okay.
I will reiterate this. My apologies. I'm not sure what happened there. But basically, our matching process is based off of a form that volunteers fill out that asks you what you're comfortable fostering. So if you're comfortable fostering a medical case cat, we will contact you when we get a case like that in. So if our health team contacts us saying, hey, we have a cat with a broken leg, can you please send it into foster care? Great, we have someone on our list that can take a medical case cat. So we kind of match based off of what is requested of us, and we'll look at our foster availability sheet that tells us what people are willing to foster so we can match people with appropriate animals. So you won't be able to pick an individual animal. You of course can say, no, I would not like to take that case on. But we will present different cases to you to see what you would like to pick from that selection. So it kind of depends on what our population looks like and what the needs are of that animal. Okay. So now supplies and support. So the great thing about our foster program is that we provide all the supplies and like behavior medical help for every animal that goes into foster care. So for example, this is a photo of a dog kit that has food, bowls, toys, treats, leash, blankets, bed, everything you might need to take care of this animal in your home environment. And if you pick up an animal and you need more supplies, you are always welcome to pick up refills. You just have to let the foster team know. And then we also have really great medical help. We just started this last year a telemedicine log for our foster volunteers where they can email us and say, like, hey, my kitten has diarrhea. What do I do? And we will put that on our telemedicine log for our vets to look at and contact you to determine if we need to start medication or, you know, if they have any advice on how to take care of that. We also have a 24/7 emergency line, and we're partnered with a clinic that helps us with cases like that. But basically, if you know your foster dog broke his leg, or maybe he went missing, or someone stole him, then we have this line that either goes to myself or someone from the foster team that can help triage through these emergencies and let you know what the best solution should be and how we can work through that. So you have support all day, every day, in case you need anything. And then on top of that, we have a really fantastic behavior team that can help offer advice. Like, let's say you bring a dog home and we didn't know it had separation anxiety. Then you can contact our behavior team and they can help work through a behavior plan to help work on this in the home environment, which is really great. We get a lot of support for the foster team. Promotion. So one of the roles of being a foster volunteer is that you can actively promote your foster animal. One of our great foster volunteers put this photo on social media of one of her kittens that was going to be available for adoption. And so they can tag us, so tag Pasadena Humane, and then we can share on our own social media. So it's this great, you know, sharing of information, photos to help get these animals placed. You can also, you know, have friends or family sign up to adopt. And that way you as the foster can screen the adopters and really, you know, pick someone that you like and have that animal go to this forever home. And the great thing about doing that is that you get to follow up if you know the person personally, and you can see how like this kitten grows. And that's kind of a really great part of fostering is that you can help match them with adopters. And so again, the goal for foster care is to ultimately say goodbye to your foster animal.
And if you can't find someone to adopt, we do have our adoptions counselors who, talk to people every day about animals that are available for adoption. And so sometimes our volunteers will get called to drop off their foster animal on campus for someone from the public who has signed up to adopt. And so that can be another way that your animal is adopted out. And so you might get forced into this position to say goodbye. And so again, you have to tell yourself, like, this is the goal of foster care. Adoption is amazing, and we love when they can move on to their next journey.
All right, I have another true false question, Izzy.
Mhm.
All right, foster volunteers can take on more animals after their current foster animals are adopted. So is this true or false? No, it seems, looking at the way that the votes are going, it seems like a very, very silly answer, because everyone has said that this is a true statement, which means we must have foster volunteers watching right now.
Yes, probably. So yes, after you have done the adoption process and you have cleared out animals from your foster home, you are welcome to foster again. So that's kind of this great cycle of moving animals around. You can continue to help so many animals. And so you can, be this big part of, the life-saving goals of our shelter. And you can go back to back to back. I've had foster volunteers who have done litters and pick up a new one when they drop off. The only thing we ask is that you clean and disinfect in between animals, so that we can keep everybody healthy and safe. I've had, foster volunteers do like 60 kittens in a year. It's definitely something that brings a lot of joy to our foster volunteers, so they will continuously do it because it's just so fun. Um, so yeah, you are absolutely welcome to foster again, and continue this, life-saving process. And here's some testimonials from foster volunteers. So I did ask if people wanted to say a little something about foster care. And I'll just summarize a little bit from what they said. But like what Ginny said, she said, it's always hard to part with fosters, but knowing we've done our part to give them their best chances is super rewarding. And I love that, because that is one of the best things about fostering is it's a very rewarding process to be a part of. And then Chris here, she fosters with her family, and she says helping them gain confidence, encouraging their curiosity, and calming their fears, anxieties, not only prepare them for their eventual separation from one another, but also for their future forever homes with families. It was super fun to be a part of their early childhood journey. So she's fostered litters of kittens before. And I think that's a great thing to hang on to as well, is that you're helping them prepare for their forever home and setting them up for success, which is fantastic. And that's my time. I think we can use this section to answer any questions you guys might have. You can put them in the chat. Michelle, correct me if I'm wrong there.
Yes, no, questions go in the chat box, and a lot of what you were saying, I know that I can personally attest to that, because I'm not only an employee, the outreach coordinator, but I am also a foster family as well. So this here is Bagheera, and he came to us during quarantine last year, and as Izzy mentioned, foster fail because he hasn't left us yet. But I can attest to they gave us all of the supplies that we needed on a very regular basis for this guy. I got to experience the telemedicine, as his umbilical cord was still attached when he came home with us, and once it fell off, it was a little bit abscessed. So I got to experience the telemedicine with one of our veterinarians. And then the fostering over and over, Bagheera is one of like 20 of the neonatal kittens that have been in our house, and it is a family affair. My daughter, who's now 17, and we started when she was 15, does all of the, 2 and 3 hour feedings with the syringe and the bottle, and yeah, they make a little bit of a mess as they get bigger, but it's, great to get them that good start in life.
Mhm.
So, and we still have a great relationship with one of the last fosters that we had, and with the family that he has gone home to. So
That's
I
really
can, I'm gonna say hello to everyone, Bagheera.
great.
Bagheera was only a day when Izzy gave him to me.
Yes, he was this big. And
Yeah,
now,
and now he's 12 pounds in over a year.
hmm wow.
So, okay, so we've got some questions rolling in.
Okay.
What happens when you have a lot of animals in the household? Does that matter?
So I always leave that up to the foster volunteer. I trust that you'll be able to know when you're overwhelmed or maybe it's too much to have in your household. Like I personally now, I adopted a dog this last year. And so I have not taken on any foster animals because now I have the two cats and the dog. And I think it would just be too much to take on some kittens like I normally would. And so you really have to be honest with yourself and your household and decide if there's enough space, if there's, any concerns of getting your pet sick. You really want to factor that in. But there are ways to work around space issues. We have like playpens and crates and things like that to help house kittens in a confined space. But otherwise, you should use your best judgment and decide, if this is too many animals to take on more. You obviously want to focus on your pets too. And so it's something you have to think about. Or maybe, if you have a lot of animals in the household, a hamster would be really easy to take on, right? That's a little guy in a tiny little cage, might be easier to manage.
Okay. Do you ever do home checks of the foster volunteers?
We do not. So in our foster training, we do cover what ideal housing scenarios would be for our animals. And so if you feel that, you might not be able to provide that for them, that's something that you can decide. But we'll also, talk about husbandry options if you pick up an animal, so that we can help you. But we won't do home checks. We trust that people that want to help foster are there to help and provide this love and care. And so we do not do home checks.
Okay. So Sandra completed an application and the quizzes last night. What are her next steps?
Ooh, okay. So typically when you finish the application and the trainings, the volunteer team needs, I guess, some paperwork filled out for you. And once they have that on file, they usually email me saying like, hey, Sandra's done. Can you send her the welcome email? And then when I get that email from them, I will reach out to the volunteer, say, hey, welcome to fostering, and then it'll have all the next steps. So if you're worried about if you've submitted an application and you haven't heard anything, you can reach out to volunteer@pasadenahumane.org and email them asking if you missed any steps. But otherwise, they will send that information over to me. And then the next day or two, you should get the welcome to fostering email.
Okay, and I know it's not something that you touched upon, but what is the length of time for fostering an animal?
Yeah, that's a great question. We get that pretty frequently. So it really depends on what animal you take on. So let's say you take on a 4-week-old kitten and it's not available until it is around 6 or 7 weeks of age. So you might need to foster this kitten for maybe 3 weeks. So it depends on the case, but also if you need to go on vacation or maybe you took an animal on and you're like, oops, I made plans, I forgot. We can always work with the volunteer to kind of work on having the animal come back, maybe for temporary boarding. And so like the time frame, it again depends on the case and depends on the foster volunteer's availability, but we'll help work with that.
Yeah, I was gonna say just around Easter time, we babysat some
Yeah.
foster kittens.
Yeah, that definitely happens, especially when people take bottle babies on. They might be gone for a weekend where they can't take the kittens with them. And so we'll find a temporary foster to take them on and then have them get picked back up.
Okay, and then what kind of trainings is it for foster volunteers?
If you're new to us, they'll have you do the general volunteer orientation, which is all, it can all be done online. It's a PowerPoint presentation, and same with the foster training. That is, again, a PowerPoint that you can do at home. We really tried to make things available online at home so people don't need to come in. And so that should be all that's in there. I know you might have to do a disease and virus training that I think the volunteer team has you do as part of the orientation.
Okay, and is there any type of training for foster volunteers on like dog training?
We're hoping to do, so we've been doing monthly webinars for foster volunteers specifically that we're planning on covering different subjects, and that will be one of the topics at some point. But there's no like specific dog fostering presentation. It's all kind of in that general fostering training.
Okay, we've got another question here. So if somebody has cats and they get a foster kitten, is it possible for the resident cats to transfer diseases to the foster because they're not vaccinated yet?
It's unlikely. So if you have your own pets at home that are adult cats, I wouldn't be too concerned about your adult cats passing something on to the kittens because the adult cats will have, their immune system developed. Um, with the kittens, though, they could have upper respiratory infection. That's very common. They have diarrhea issues, and that could definitely pass on to your cat. So I always say, like, separate them as much as possible. We tell volunteers to at least wait like 10 to 14 days to have this observation period to watch their foster animal to make sure that they're healthy. And if they have any concern, like medical concerns, keep them separate. And like when I was fostering before I had my dog, I always kept my cat separate, even past the 10 to 14-day period, just because I didn't want my cats to get sick at all. So I didn't have any exposure there. And so that's something you have to consider, is that if you do want your foster animals to meet your animals, um, there may be some spread to your animals mostly, not usually the other way around.
Yeah, I will say, in my house, because I have a dog and now we have the cat, and in between time we've taken in other fosters, we've always given like a 2-week quarantine to the new babies. And then like it's a slow meet and greet with the dog and the cat because you mentioned that foster kittens are kind of bulletproof, and I will say that we around our house, we expose them to the dog, expose them to the cat. We put their fingers in their mouth so they get used to it, and stick them in their ears and rub their bellies. And so they get all kinds of socialization. And, and this being a family fair, it completely is. Because like I said, I do this with my daughter, and Izzy knows my kid. And it is one of the best experiences that we have had in our house. I kind of taught her some responsibilities because, home ec classes really don't exist in high school anymore. And so this kind of showed her that there is something bigger than just her without me having to say it.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, we definitely have had a lot of families in the last year, especially, who have enjoyed fostering so much because it's been really great for their kids. And I think it's a great like family effort too. I have really enjoyed being a part of it and watching like these kids grow and learn all these responsibilities and really get involved. It's been a really fun part of my job that I didn't think that I would get to, be a part of, but it definitely is a big perk of the foster program.
Yeah, I will say it, like working with the kids in all of our programming, one of the things is like, oh, well, I'm not really a people person, so I want to work with animals. I guess that's a question for you. Like, I know you never thought that you would work with people as much, but do you enjoy that?
I do love working with people. Of course, yeah, I I went to school to study animal science, and like that was my goal. I was so focused on animals, but um, you know, we have this partnership with animals, like the human animal bond. It's just inherently there. So there's not really a way to work with animals without having some sort of aspect with humans. And so I've really enjoyed that aspect because I wouldn't have a program if I didn't have these wonderful volunteers helping me. So it's this really great, collaboration of people and animals working together to kind of keep this program going, which I've really enjoyed.
So, and now I know we've gotten some snakes into the shelter. Has any of them ever been sent to foster care, or would a snake be sent out into foster
It
care?
depends. So, well, one, I don't think we've ever sent a snake into foster care, not yet. Um, but that's what I said about guinea pigs, and then we sent so many out last year. So I think it's something that, if the need is there, we'll send them into foster care. We get snakes in here and there. And so I'm sure if it was requested of us to put them into foster care, we would find a way.
As long as there was somebody willing to do it.
Exactly. That's the one caveat is that someone has to say, I can foster snakes. And I'll be like, okay, great, we have one. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I know, there is a question that keeps getting asked, and I know that we have addressed it a little bit, but what kind of food and supplies do we supply for fosters, and
Yeah.
is it just the sole responsibility of the foster team to supply the food, or do they need to supply it, like after a certain point, supply it themselves?
So we feed our animal science diet, whether dog, cat, kitten, puppy, and we will give you like a bag of the dry food and a flat of wet food. But if you need refills, we can provide that. We do have some foster volunteers that will buy their own food. We just ask that it's the same brand so that there's no GI digestive upset. Because if you switch food very quickly, it can make them have diarrhea or vomiting. And so, like, you're welcome to either purchase it on your own if you would like. But if that's not an option, then we can provide that for our volunteers. We really try to make it a really accessible program. So, like, if you can't afford buying food and toys for every foster animal, of course, yeah, we can provide that for you because basically the foster program is an extension of our kennels, right? So if these animals were on campus, we would be providing them the same supplies. And so essentially, my team we have our own foster budget where we buy these supplies for foster animals to send out with our volunteers. Does that answer the question?
I hope it answers the question. I know that, I've been a part of the, the program, and it's been really a great experience for me because all of the supplies that I needed, have been given to us, and it's, we do the neonatal kittens, and I know I've actually purchased some of the items myself, like bottles, and because those get reused. But like the KMR, all of the food comes to us, and a scale, because it's so important to weigh those neonatal kittens to make sure that they are gaining weight. And Izzy mentioned that they do have a budget for buying supplies, but we also have an Amazon wish list, and I'm going to drop that link into the chat box as well if you want to help support the foster program, and with the toys and the food and all kinds of supplies. I mean, we use baby wipes.
Yes, we
for
do.
neonatal kittens.
A lot. Yes.
So And then the last question, Izzy, before we wrap things up, can you still foster if you live with outside of our service cities?
Yes, you can. We will not limit people based off of location. The only things that you want to think about, though, is if you live far away, like in the event of an emergency and you need to come to Pasadena to bring your foster animal, that might be something that could be a big concern. If your animal needs to be seen right away, and it takes you, an hour to get to campus, that might be a bit of an issue for that animal in particular in the event of an emergency. But also, if it's it'll become difficult for you to come to appointments on time. Those are some things you want to think about. Like we have volunteers that we have one in like Santa Clarita, someone in Long Beach, and they're willing to make that drive. But do be conscientious of like if an emergency happens or if you need to come pick up medication, like you have to make the time to come get that in a timely manner.
All right. Well, Izzy, thank you so much for joining us today. This was a lot of good information. And then for the community, so as I mentioned in the beginning, this webinar is recorded. It will be sent to the email address you provided to Eventbrite tomorrow afternoon. If you would like to donate any supplies, you can go ahead and drop those off at our shelter at 361 South Raymond in Pasadena. You can purchase off of our wish list and they get sent straight into our shelter. If there are any questions that we didn't get to, you can go ahead and send those to outreach@pasadenahumane.org, or you can visit our website. I've dropped the link to fostering in the chat box, and we hope to see some of your names pop up as new fosters. Thank you everyone for joining us. Izzy, I hope you have an amazing afternoon with your babies.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for joining us, everybody.
All right, bye.
Bye.